Hi, this is Mike Balzer for All Things 3D, and I finally made it to CES today. Um, in fact, I was kind of, let's see, invited to come in and talk to Fuel 3D, so I decided to get right off the airplane, take a shuttle, which was going in the wrong direction. So I got off the shuttle and walked all the way to the Sands Convention Center. No, not actually. I found a taxi halfway. He had to get his coffee, but then I finally made it here. But on that note, I'm finally here, and we have um, Stuart Mead. Boy, I guess I should get my names down before I come in. Who is, I'm assuming, the CEO of Fuel3D. I've heard a lot about you. I've actually talked to Stephen a couple of times, and from the accent, you're not really from here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Obviously, I already said you're from across the pond, so kind of tell us a little bit more about that as well. So it's all
Yeah,
yours.
thanks very much. Nice to meet you, Michael, at last. Yes, my name's Stuart Mead. As you can tell from my accent, I'm a Brit. I'm come from just outside London, and I've been with Fuel 3D since the beginning, and its previous company, which was Icona, where the technology originally started from. I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur, so this is probably my fourth or fifth startup technology company.
So are you an engineer by trade, or?
No, I'm not an engineer by trade. I'm business and finance trained.
Okay. So what spurred you to say, gosh, there needs to be a inexpensive, I'll use the word inexpensive, reliable, accurate, high precision 3D scanner? Did it just come to you, or did somebody come to you and say, I've got this great idea? How'd that work out?
So actually, it was a bit of serendipity. The original company, Icona, was using the technology for medical, in wound care, in fact. And we had an application from a customer who wanted to look at doing burns masks. So I took a scan from a face for a burns mask and took it to a 3D printing company in London. And they printed out the burns mask and said to me, have you really thought about what else you might do with this scanner? And that was the beginning of the journey, really, for Fuel 3D.
Hmm. So when did you actually, well, let me stick with my questions first. So you've been, I guess this is part of the question. So Fuel 3D, I think, started a Kickstarter, what, August of last year? Was that correct?
Yeah,
Or
August of the year before now, but yes, it did. Yeah, we did a
uh,
Kickstarter.
in 2013, or was it before then?
It was 2013. Yeah,
Yes. In August of 2013, was that
that's
about the
correct.
time
Yeah.
frame? Okay. Yes, and I was really excited about that. And did you initially get your funding from the Kickstarter, or did you have other backers before that?
So we did Kickstarter really to show that the technology had a life outside of medical, and the idea of that really was to prove that to investors. So it was really a seed fund really for us to get traction with investors. And it was extraordinarily successful, as you know. So it really did bring a lot of investors to the table.
Yeah. So when you actually introduced it to Kickstarter, it was more of concept art, or I think even had a prototype at that time. And following it over the period of time, it's kind of evolved. You, in fact, used part of the Kickstarter backers to help actually mold its design, if I remember correctly. So the Kickstarter backers have actually played a big part in the product as we see it today. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, it is correct. I mean, the thing about Kickstarter backers is they're an extraordinarily technically competent group of people who are very interested in the technology. So we've had a great experience with these guys. We've tested their patience a little bit, perhaps with the delivery times, but they've been fantastic and they've helped us technically and fed back a lot of information.
yeah, sadly, I had some other commitments at the time, and I couldn't fully invest in it, but I really wanted to. In fact, I keep telling Stephen, oh, I invested, hopefully to get my hands on one, but I think he figured it out by now. But I did put a little money into it because I really wanted to see this thing move forward. So let's kind of get into the technology a little bit. You know, I'm
Sure.
familiar with projection-based scanners as well as time-of-flight scanners. Is this kind of a combination of the two? And what's this mysterious target that's involved with this thing?
Okay, so it's not either of those two technologies. It's not either of those two technologies. We're actually using stereo and photometry. So we're using stereo cameras,
That's right.
calibrated cameras, and we're taking a stereo pair three times by illuminating from a different angle and creating the shape from shading.
You know, it's interesting. I did a podcast about a month ago with some surveyors and somebody who also does aerial landscape stereography, and we kind of talked about that. And for some reason, I've forgotten today. Maybe it's jet lag. Yeah, for about an hour. However, I should know that. But it is a stereoscope or a stereography type technique that allows you to derive 3D information. But isn't that computational intensive?
Well, it is a little bit computationally expensive, I guess, but we get our time now to resolve an image is about 20 seconds. So it's pretty quick.
Wow.
Obviously, time to actually capture the object is 0.05 of a second. So overall, the scan to model is very, very quick.
Okay, so 0.05 to capture it, and then it's funneled through a USB cable to a PC, correct?
Absolutely right.
Now, is it just a PC, or does it work for Macs or Linux? What's the actual platform?
So currently it's Windows, and it will be Mac in the next 2 or 3 months.
Okay, so yeah, for those Mac people. Personally, I use PCs most of the time.
I'm a Mac person, so the company's pretty focused on getting Mac out there.
Well, that's good. For those Mac people out there. I actually do iOS development, so I work in that area. Now, with that being the case, I noticed when Stephen came that he was actually using either a tablet or a very small portable laptop. I think it was actually a tablet. So even though this thing is fairly portable, it still requires a computer. So are you suggesting maybe tablets in the future with this thing, or maybe, may I ask, maybe in 2016 that'll actually be built in?
So the reason that we use a separate computer, of course, is that we wanted to get the cost of goods down. So, as you said in the beginning of the interview, it's very important for us to get the cost of goods as low as we could. So obviously we use the computational power of a separate computer. But what's nice is actually the algorithms will run on a tablet. So you can put a tablet onto the back of the camera. We will be providing fairly soon a bracket that allows you to actually physically attach the tablet to the back of the camera.
Oh,
so it'll be very, very portable.
Okay.
There are some challenges with building the computer and the screen into a device because it ages very quickly.
Yes.
And that's
I
think, a big challenge.
Yeah, as you're probably familiar, and I'll disclose now, I've worked with Structure Sensor. I've interviewed them a lot. I like the idea of having a small sensor because, as you said, the hardware behind it changes so quickly.
Right.
So if you've got a nice sensor, then as things evolve. In fact, the tablet I think was already dated when Stephen came, and I'm trying to think of the name of the company. For some reason, Venom comes to mind, but there's a series of. Go ahead.
I think it was a Dell, wasn't it? It was a Dell.
Maybe at a Dell. There's another company who's got a small tablet, I think about a 10-inch, that is a full PC compatible with a graphics card built into it. I think it's an NVIDIA. On that note, are you supporting the CUDA cores to accelerate the processing, or is it strictly processor intensive or CPU intensive?
So at the moment it's processor intensive, but we are working on the program to use the GPU type processing.
So with that being the case, then that other tablet will probably fall in the line with it.
Correct,
too.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So let's see where I'm at now. Okay, let's get on to the physical design. As I mentioned, you sent out a series of design sketches or prototype to kind of let the Kickstarter kind of get vote on it. I don't know how much they had to play in that, but you eventually decided on a design that had two handles. Was there a reason for that? You found that it was more functional?
Yeah, so, well, the first thing was it was very important to us to get the Kickstarter feedback. And in fact, actually, we did go with the Kickstarter feedback design. So we did actually do that. The reason we got a two-handle design is to encourage people to use both hands to hold it. Obviously, being a handheld scanner, the least movement you have with the scanner when you take the image, the better the quality of the image is going to be, or the less hard the algorithms have to work. So that was really the thought process behind that.
Okay, and as mentioned, Stephen had a prototype, and it looked really comfortable the way that you just held it up, and it seemed to work really well. As mentioned, I use the structure sensor, and I have actually compressed it down to a size that can be used by one hand, but the problem is you still have to touch the screen.
Yeah.
But I'm working on a solution for that as well.
Very good.
So, but yes, it would be nice to be able to just hold it, have your buttons there, and I'm assuming there are buttons that you can operate, and never have to touch your computer or anything else. So I'm assuming that's the case with the Fuel3D. Everything's in the handles, so you don't have to go back and touch the PC.
That's absolutely true. And also, you actually don't have to look at the PC when you take the image, because we have some colored arrows and indicators on the back of the scanner, so you can actually see when the scanner's in focus and when it's ready to take a picture.
Okay. Now, when Stephen showed it to me, it just looked like a hole. Has that been replaced with an LCD panel, or is it just indicators with the, I guess, the sight square or rectangle that you had in there?
So if I answer your question, Michael, I think there's still a hole through the center.
Okay.
That's done for a couple of reasons. One is so you can look at the object you're taking a scan of. And secondly, if you're scanning a human being, it looks a lot less oppressive if there's actually a gap rather than a solid object in front of your face. So that was part of the design.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So you've already kind of talked about it already. I'm assuming because of the amount of data that has to go through this device into the computer that you're using USB 3 or are you still working with a USB 2?
So you can use USB 2 or 3.
Okay, so the
We,
transfer rate isn't that high, I guess.
no, it's not. The reason that we selected that is we wanted to make sure it'd be backward compatible with relatively low spec machines. So we didn't want people to have a high spec machine to use it. And we have a separate power cord because if you use USB 2, you can't draw enough current through a USB 2 to actually drive the device. So we have two cables.
That's great to hear because then, like you said, you can use older machines. And I've had some problems using USB 3. They're not all what they're called. Up.
I agree.
I can't talk anymore. Sorry, I'm jet lag. Yeah, that's what I was saying. So one of the things that has also come out in your own blogs is that the software to stitch the meshes together is still in the works, not available when the actual product will be shipped. Is that correct, or?
Yeah, so again, it was great help for the Kickstarter guys. So the beta backers, we sent out the hardware and the software with the stitching. And the feedback that came back was that the hardware was ready and most of the software was good, but that the stitching wasn't quite intuitive enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a beta version of the software and invite all the Kickstarter backers to participate in the beta program if they'd like to. Okay. And that's only a couple of months away. It's not a long way away.
Okay, well, that's not too bad then.
Yeah.
One of the things that I remember is that you had another company, and I can't think of the name now.
Uformia.
I'm sorry?
Uformia.
Okay, are they still involved with you?
Very much so,
okay.
Yeah, very much so.
Now, I recall that they also did a Kickstarter, and I don't know if they've even actually brought that product out for their Kickstarter backers yet. In fact, I've got my co-host back them, and I don't think he's received as yet. And I have a feeling it's because their priority now is with Fuel3D. But you're saying they're still strongly working with you, and your software will be available?
Yeah, very much so. They've been a very, very important part of our development program. It's amazing actually how much you have to do in a year to get a product to market when it's got hardware and software. So really without their partnership it would have been a real struggle to get to where we've got to today. So they're a very important part of the team really.
That's good to hear, and hopefully he'll get his product when that comes out as well. So currently if I were to receive a unit, what's the maximum size or that I can scan without having to manually stitch it together?
So the current size is about the size of a piece of paper, a foolscap piece of paper is the current scan size.
Okay.
It's a little bigger than we thought it would be when we did the Kickstarter actually.
That's true, because I remember when I had my face done, it was just this little tiny portion of it. In fact, I'll show it to you afterwards. I have a little miniature me. Are you guys familiar with Game of Thrones?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I've got my little Stark character. If you ever followed my blog, I actually did one with my wife. Actually, I'll have both. I'll show them to you. But I did one of her, and I call it Winter is Coming, and I have two Cleekais, which are miniature, what are they, Huskies. But they look like wolves, so I kind of blew them up and put them all in this little piece together. But it was kind of fun. But I actually took that scan when Stephen was here and put that on my own face.
Oh, cool. Very good.
So I'll show it to you when we get done here. So with that being said, when are you actually going to have this available for pre-order for those people besides backers?
So currently we're shipping the beta units. We're doing it by geography just to try and keep our lives a little bit simpler. So we've satisfied all the UK orders already, and we're catching up with the back orders. We do have a lot of back orders over and above the Kickstarter. It's been extraordinarily popular as a product.
That's mine.
So I think we'll be cleared our back order situation by the end of March, and we're looking to be shipping from stock in April.
Okay, well, I guess I won't use the term better late than never, but no, you have made a lot of progress with it. My biggest concern has been the size and the auto stitching functionality.
Sure.
However, I do believe that there is progression because I know the whole industry is moving forward. So let's talk about one other item, and that's that magical, what do you want to call it, target that you have to put in front of your face or whatever you're scanning. What's the purpose of that?
So the target does a number of things. It's a fiduciary, and it allows us to compensate for movement of the camera because it's handheld while it captures the images. It was very important in the early days when the image capture time was a second between the three flashes. You could do quite a lot of movement within 3 seconds. Now that the camera is actually taking the whole lot in less than 0.05 of a second, the target's working a lot less hard than it used to. It also is a rangefinder and allows to make sure that the cameras are exactly the right distance from the subject when you take the image.
Okay.
So it has two purposes at the moment.
Okay. Sounds good. Now that target is kind of evolved. So now is it smaller now? If I
No, actually, it's
understand.
exactly the same size
Okay.
as it always has been.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look in your booth,
Yeah.
so I had just thought it was going to get a little bit smaller. Um, Currently, when I got my mesh back, you could actually see it as part of it. So do you have an algorithm that's going to remove that as you do stitching?
Well, I think there's a number of options for us. So now that the camera is so fast, I think the target is less important to the whole technology. So there's a program that we're working on very hard to remove the target
Oh, okay.
from the scene entirely. Of course, you can just crop around the target if you want to using the cropping software. And there are some other options with the target as well.
So with the delays, there are other people now going to be entering the 3D scanning or the portable 3D scanning market. I sent a series of names. I'll go through them really quick. MakerBot. You're already familiar with Occipital, Soft Kinetics, and I learned a lot about this about 2 or 3 months ago because there's somebody in Ohio who's come out with an Android 3D scanner, but
Okay.
wouldn't tell me who his source was. Well, the CEO of Soft Kinetics wrote to me and said, by the way, we're that source. And I guess they have a booth here or doing special presentations, but they're really pushing heavy to get into this market. And then we've got Intel and also Google that is moving into this
Sure.
market as well. Um, where do you see yourselves in line with them? Do you still feel that your technology has the precision and the resolution that these other types of devices won't have?
Yeah, I think, Michael, as you know, that there's no one scanner that does everything. So all these scanners have strengths and weaknesses.
Mhm.
Our speed of capture really is our strength, one of our primary strengths, particularly when you're looking at capturing the human form or some of the living organic objects. So I think we have a great space, and we're happy to occupy that space. This is a very fast-growing industry. There's plenty of spaces for all of us to be there, I think, at the moment.
And that's what I say as well, because I actually have a next engine scanner, which is a little bit more price. It cost me $6,000 for all the software and the device, but it's for static. It's very slow, but
Correct.
if I want precise, high quality, and then I have the structure sensor and the connector, and those are low resolution but very fast. So I really wanted that little niche product, your product, in between that, because I also have people who come in who want their feet scanned or things like that. In fact, because of your coming to market a little bit late, I've created a product called Four Eyes. I don't know if you've read about it. That's an optical system that fits on the front of the structure sensor in order to get that little bit more resolution out of it. But I still need the Fuel3D because I think that's the next step. Plus, it will save me some programming because now I have to work with the artifacts from my lens system. Um, but there's one other, what would you call them, bear out there, and I guess that's RTech. Your technology is a little similar to them. What happens when they say, oh, we're not going to stay in the 10,000, 20,000 stratosphere, but we're going to come out with the $2,000? Will that be a concern, or do you feel by then that your product will mature enough?
We're not going to stand still, as you can imagine. So we've got a good team of people working away on the next generations of product for us, and most of that's going to be software. And the good news is that's backward compatible with our hardware, so our existing customers can benefit from that. But again, our tech, like all the other technologies, has a sweet spot. It still doesn't capture the subject in 0.05 of a second. If you want to capture a human being, you've got to capture it very fast, otherwise you lose the resolution. There's no ground truth to refer back to.
Yeah, I interviewed them about a month and a half ago about their booth that they're coming out with. And like you said, it's still a slow scan process. And there's only one company, well, there's a couple, but Dube, it's from Berlin or Germany. They're coming out with a photogrammetry system, but like $100,000. So all of these are ridiculously priced. So again, there seems to be a good spot for that. On that note, we didn't really talk about price. What does it cost to get a Fuel3D?
So the list price in the US is $14.90 plus any taxes.
Okay. Well, that's still the same price.
We've kept the price. We've kept the
Excellent.
price, and we've built some more features into it, so we're pleased about that.
And for my audience out there in our tech, and I've mentioned it before, starts at 10,000. So you're getting the same quality and accuracy of the RTech, or maybe even better. We'll see, but for a lot less. And with that, I think that's about it. I don't know if you want to share anything with my audience that's going to come out in 2016, or just kind of keep working hard on getting this one out.
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for their patience. We did try very hard to be company that delivered Kickstarter on time, and we're a little bit behind, and we're very, very conscious of that. We're doing everything we can to get those back orders shipped.
Well, you're in good company. Who on Kickstarter doesn't ship late?
Yeah, we'd like to have been the first, but we're not, so I'm sorry about that.
Well, don't worry about it as long as the product's good. Well, again, thank you, and I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to actually going and testing it out tomorrow.
Great.
And on that note, this is All Things 3D with our interview, and I appreciate you tuning in. Bye.